Victoria and I had been in love for a full 12 years. However, on her 21st birthday, simply because I took her, drunk and disoriented, to a hotel for the night, she began to despise me. Despite this, I managed to marry her. But what I didn't expect was that this was just the beginning of her revenge. She brazenly dated her first love and often humiliated me. She hated me for 6 whole years and took her revenge on me for 6 years. In the end, a truck came by, and she was completely freed from me. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn on her 21st birthday. This time, I decided to let her go and also free myself. Sincere, come over to the Williams place. Vicky is having a huge argument with her parents at her birthday party and is currently smashing things, my mother hurriedly said over the phone before hanging up. I had been reborn on Victoria's 21st birthday. I had been entangled with Victoria for 12 years, and from this day on, she would start to hate me. But fortunately, none of that had started yet. I opened my phone, scrolled through the school group chat, found Victoria's crush, and sent him a message. Victoria's arguing with her parents at home. Go check on her. After sending the message, I finally sighed in relief. Memories from my past life flooded my mind. My mother and Victoria's mother were friends. I was a year older than Victoria and grew up together with her. In my past life, I also received a call from my mother, hurried over, and ran into Victoria just as she was storming out. She seemed to have had some drinks, her eyes were red, and she demanded I take her home. After we got home, she asked me to stay with her a while longer. I drank some more with her, but the alcohol was too strong and we both passed out. The next day, the news that I took Victoria away from her birthday party and didn't return all night was posted on the school's confession wall, even accompanied by a video of me helping her into the elevator and into the room, never to come out again. Victoria was the school beauty and rumors spread like wildfire. Although the post was taken down, gossip couldn't be stopped. Marry me. Let's get engaged. These were Victoria's words to me. I still remember that day. She was wearing a white dress, her head lowered and her hands clasped together. Everyone around knew I liked Victoria, so it seemed only natural that we got engaged. I was thrilled by Victoria's attitude. We were going to get married and have countless days together. I would love her, protect her, and never let her feel sad or cry again. During that time, I felt like the luckiest person in the world. Chapter 2. Until the engagement party, an oddly familiar man walked in from the entrance of the banquet hall, and Victoria's gaze followed him closely. After the party, I found Victoria hiding in the dressing room, wiping away tears. "Vicky, do you have someone you like?" I asked. She replied, "You've got what you wanted. Can't I have someone I like?" Her gaze was cold, and her tone was accusatory. She was clearly blaming me for breaking her and her lover apart. But in the past 3 years, I had never heard of her liking anyone, let alone dating. Though I loved Victoria deeply, I had no intention of forcing her to marry me. Besides, nothing had actually happened that night. I frowned and said, "Vicky, if you don't want to, I'll convince our parents to call off the engagement." She retorted, "Stop pretending, just set the wedding date." She glared at me and walked away. From then on, she began her 6-year-long hatred towards me. The phone on the table rang again, interrupting my thoughts. It was my mother. "Didn't I ask you to come? Why did that guy show up instead?" Now Vicky has left with him, and Beth is so angry she can barely. I still remember it vividly. It was the 2nd year of our marriage. She no longer wore that stern expression she had in the beginning. Occasionally we would sit together on the couch and watch an old movie, until she opened the photo album. With a look of disgust, she said, "Sincere, you really planned all of this from the start. You're disgusting." She slammed the door and left. Our relationship dropped to freezing point once again. What did I do? That photo was taken when I was 10 years old, showing my purest admiration for her. What part of that was disgusting to her? Later, I found out that Victoria hated me because of the provocations from the man she loved. I finally understood the reason behind her hatred. but I never had the chance to explain it to her. Or rather, she wasn't willing to listen to a single word I said. I planned to propose a divorce, but at that time the Victoria family was facing a financial crisis. Divorcing at that moment would be like kicking them while they were down. I couldn't do that. I couldn't let Victoria face the crisis alone. After helping the Victoria family overcome the crisis, I didn't propose a divorce again because, apart from seeing our elders, she never came home. We had become strangers living under the same roof. The love I once yearned for had completely turned into a commercial marriage. I thought that this was how things would be between us until we grew old. From a certain perspective, it was a form of staying together for life, until that man reappeared in Victoria's life. By then, Victoria had become an important member of the Victoria group. Our relationship didn't affect our cooperation, but it was obvious that the man was right. Victoria still liked him. In the photo sent by a friend, the man was tidying up her slightly messy hair. She looked up at him and smiled, just like the day we first met. So I said to her, "Let's get a divorce." After 6 long years, I was tired. Since the man Victoria loved had returned, I wanted to fulfill her wish. At least one of us could be happy. She asked, "What are you up to this time?" Her voice on the other end of the phone was as cold as ever. With the two companies recently starting a new partnership, she was worried I might use the divorce to breach the contract. I said, "It won't affect our cooperation." After some thought, I added, "Let's meet to discuss it in detail." I didn't call a driver and drove to her company myself, but I never made it to the destination. When the truck crashed into me, I saw a group of children on the sidewalk. Without turning the wheel, my car and I were crushed completely. Chapter 4. Sin, thank you for taking care of my parents. Read the message from Victoria. I frowned. Shouldn't she be with the man she loves right now? Then again, if that incident in the past life was orchestrated by that man, he surely wouldn't fall into his own trap. However, I was no longer interested in getting involved in their affairs. Exiting the chat with Victoria, I removed her from the top of my contact list. Just then, another message popped up. "Sin, I want to start a business. Will you join me?" The message was from my childhood friend Charles. I was stunned for a moment, then remembered that Charles had asked me the same thing in the past life. But back then, I was unconscious, then busy deleting videos and handling rumors, and later, preparing for my engagement with Victoria. This matter was left unresolved. Thinking of this, I immediately replied, "Yes, let's start tomorrow." On the other end, Charles responded, "What?" Clearly, he hadn't anticipated my quick agreement. I said, "Before starting a business, we need to do some research. We can't just stay local. That's not really starting a business." He replied, you're right. Following you, Sin, will definitely make it big." After discussing our ideas for a while, I decided to pack my things. As I stood up, the photo album on my lap fell to the ground. After a moment's thought, I threw it into the trash can beside the desk. The next day, after informing my parents, I left with Charles for another city. Leaving here was both for the sake of starting a business and for temporarily staying away from Victoria. In this life, everything between Victoria and me would end here. I wouldn't entangle myself any further, nor would I waste more time and effort on this matter. After arriving in the new city, it didn't take long for Charles and me to spot a business opportunity. With the experience from my past life, I knew what could make money now. He said, "Bro, we're all set now, just missing the funds." Charles scratched his head. "Do we have to go back and ask our parents for money?" Just then the phone rang. Charles took out his phone and said, "Hey, Victoria's calling, she's probably looking for you." He nudged me with a knowing look and stood up to answer the call. I said, "If she asks about me, just say you don't know where I am." Charles was taken aback but complied, diverting her questions as I requested. He then asked, "Bro, don't you like her?" Charles looked at me with confusion. I smiled. "She has someone she loves. Do I look like the kind of person who would break up a happy couple?" I patted Charles on the shoulder and continued, "I'm going to freshen up." Seeing my response, Charles didn't say more. but I noticed from the corner of my eye that he was pressing his phone screen so hard it might catch fire. I knew he was spreading this explosive news in our friend group. I smiled wryly. This might be for the best. Chapter 5. I had a good night's sleep but was woken up by Charles at 7 in the morning. Sin, we have someone willing to invest in us. The investor was one of Charles's classmates. We quickly arranged a meeting. At a local cafe, we had arranged to meet up. The person said, "My dad wants me to start a business, but I'm afraid I'll squander all our money. You guys seem more reliable." Sophie was wearing jeans and a white short-sleeve shirt, looking as if she had just rushed over after getting out of bed. Her father doted on her, not only treating her well but also grooming her as his successor. However, it seemed that Sophie just wanted to take it easy. Charles said, "Don't worry, if you follow Sin, there will be plenty to gain." He was cheerfully serving tea and water on the side. With Sophie joining us, our funding issues were essentially resolved. Sophie said, "Sin, your choice of clothes is too conventional." She spent half the day advising Charles on his outfit, and after selecting the right clothes, she turned to look at me. We were going to attend an industry gathering that day. I looked at myself in the mirror, dressed in a proper suit, complete with a tie. "I don't see any problem with it," I said. She replied, "Do you understand that the three of us are a team?" Sophie threw something down from upstairs. I reached out and caught it. It was a tie that matched the color of her dress. As the investor, I certainly had no reason to refuse her request. I obediently tied the tie while the two of them came down from upstairs. Charles was wearing a white suit with a tie that matched Sophie's dress. They looked quite compatible, I thought to myself. Charles said, "Not bad at all. The three of us could be spies now." He walked over to me, raised his eyebrows, and mimed holding a gun. Sophie rolled her eyes and said, "You a spy?" Charles retorted, "Why not? That's how they do it on TV." Watching Charles and Sophie bicker, I relaxed and couldn't help but smile. This kind of life was pretty good. Even though Sophie had become our investor, she still ran around with us. She was very smart, quickly picking up anything and offering many insightful opinions, which surprised me. No wonder her father let her start her own business. With such a good mind, she could succeed in anything. We attended the banquet as our own people, unlike before when we would accompany our parents. We were all a bit nervous. Chapter 6. What I didn't expect was to see Victoria there. After all, we had known each other for almost 20 years. Seeing a familiar figure from afar, I knew it was her. But the person standing next to her was not her beloved. Sensing my gaze, Victoria looked over and called out, "Sin!" Her eyes lit up with a hint of surprise. She let go of the person she was with and walked towards me, lifting her dress. This made me a bit dazed. Previously, Victoria always seemed like a proud princess in front of me. For so many years in the past, I was always the one to approach her. When she was in a good mood, she would call me Sin. When she was in a bad mood, she would merely nod slightly to acknowledge my presence. It was rare to see her walk towards me with such a smile. Victoria came up and tried to link arms with me. I instinctively stepped aside, avoiding her. Her expression froze, seemingly not expecting me to react this way. When she looked at me again, her eyes were already red. "Hi, Vicky," Charles said, sensing the slightly awkward atmosphere. He stepped forward to greet Victoria. Since he was my good friend, he also called her Vicky. Victoria ignored Charles and continued to look directly at me. I asked, "Vicky, is there something you need?" I sighed inwardly, not wanting the atmosphere to be too tense, so I had to speak up. Hearing me speak, Victoria took a step back, putting some distance between us. She looked down and asked, "Sin, can you come back and marry me?" Her words stunned not only me but also Charles, who was beside me. With a petrified expression, what was Victoria doing? In the past, I longed to marry her, but she hated me. In this life, I let her be with her beloved, and now she was talking about marrying me? I asked, "Don't you have someone you like?" I spoke calmly and was somewhat surprised to find that hearing Victoria mention marriage didn't stir any feelings in me. It turned out that I no longer liked her. She bit her lip and said, "No, he's just." Victoria stammered, and at that moment a familiar voice called out, "Have you seen my brooch?" It was Sophie, who had just finished talking with two acquaintances and was walking towards Charles and me. Victoria's expression became stiff. Her gaze shifted from me to Sophie and then to my tie. Sophie asked, "Who is this?" She naturally noticed Victoria standing in front of me and gave her a bright smile. I said, "She's the daughter of my mother's good friend, Victoria." I turned back to answer Sophie and added, "You forgot your brooch when you went out." Sophie rolled her eyes at me and extended her hand to Victoria. "Hello, Victoria. I'm Sophie, their boss," Sophie said. Charles retorted, "Do you even understand what a partner is?" He made a sarcastic remark, causing Sophie to pretend to hit him. Victoria finally turned around and noticed Charles's tie, seemingly realizing something, and let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 7. "Sophie, what's going on?" Sin asked, watching Victoria leave. Only then did Charles and Sophie walk over to me. I said, "How would I know?" "But you didn't even wear a brooch today." Sophie replied, "I thought you were caught up in some romantic mess and came to help you out. Who knew you wouldn't play along?" She winked slyly. Charles added, "What romantic mess? Sin has liked Victoria for many years now. Let me count, it's probably..." Watching Charles count on his fingers, Sophie burst into laughter. I said, "All right, enough with the embarrassment. There's nothing between Victoria and me, and there never will be." I gave Charles a slap on the back and said seriously, "Don't forget why we're here today." Sophie said, That over there is Mr. Smith, a friend of my dad. Let's go say hello." She pointed to the side. Charles and I straightened up and walked over. After the banquet ended, Charles and I had just dropped Sophie off when my mother's call came through. "Sincere, your Aunt Beth called and said Vicky has nowhere to go. Let her stay at your place for the night. I know you don't want to be with Vicky anymore, but she grew up under my watch. Even if you don't like her anymore, we can't just ignore her." My mother sighed. "We grew up together, and over the years my mother had come to see Victoria as her own daughter. Even though I no longer had feelings for Victoria, I couldn't just leave her stranded. I said, 'Send me the location. I'll go get her.'" I had long since blocked Victoria's contact and didn't want to unblock her now just for this. Charles and I picked Victoria up from a hotel. She was still in her evening dress, looking a bit cold, hugging herself for warmth. When Charles stopped the car in front of her, she didn't react at first, frowning slightly. I had to open the car door and invite her in as usual. "Sin, why are you driving this car?" she said, her tone carrying a hint of complaint and disdain. Charles, who had been smiling and handing her a blanket, paused and his smile faded. "In my previous life, I didn't start my own business, and Victoria always seemed willing to sacrifice everything for love, so I never had the chance to see that she cared about these things too." Victoria seemed to notice Charles's expression. She pursed her lips, wanting to say something but couldn't. I asked, "You were already at the hotel, so why do you need to come to my place?" Glancing at the hotel next to us, it seemed like the Victoria's family had arranged it for her. She said, "When I used to travel, our families would always be together, and you were always by my side. Now that I'm alone in the hotel, I'm a bit scared." Victoria grabbed my sleeve, her voice choked with emotion. I asked, "Then why did you come here alone?" She said, "I came to find you." It seemed my mother had told Victoria about my whereabouts. I sighed. "Victoria, I know you have someone you love. Now that I'm gone, you can be with him." She said, "After you left, Dad started setting me up on blind dates." Her words caught me off guard. Victoria had always been treated like a princess in her family. So why the sudden rush to marry her off? Thinking about it, I suddenly understood why Victoria wanted to marry me the moment she saw me today. She saw me as her lifeline. Frowning, I said, "I used to like you, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to marry someone who doesn't love me." The pain from my previous life was still fresh in my mind. We had been like oil and water. There was no way I would let that happen again. She said, "No, Sin, I like you," she explained anxiously. She didn't seem to be lying, which confused me even more. In my previous life, Victoria had loved that man so much. How could she compromise so quickly in this life? Not only compromise, but chase after me, claiming to love me? She had hated me for 6 years because of that man in my last life. Could it be that she was reborn too? As if guessing my thoughts, Victoria cleared her throat and said, "I saw the album you made for me in the trash bin, so that was it." I let out a sigh of relief. "You should know why it was in the trash, right?" Victoria was wrapping herself in the blanket. Hearing my words, she froze, and tears started to well up. I handed her a few tissues and helped cover her with the blanket. If she had been reborn, it was better to lay everything out clearly. I said, "Vicky, since you know everything, you should understand that I never forced you. Now that we have a second chance, don't hate me anymore, and don't see me as a lifeline." Victoria continued to sob. I sat next to her, memories of our past life flashing before my eyes. Victoria coldly telling me to get out of her room. Victoria hysterically questioning why I had hit the person she loved. Victoria's indifferent gaze at her engagement party, and the way she only called me Sin when she needed help. There was also the time when she was a little girl saying she wanted to marry me. I remember the first time I met Victoria. She was standing under a peach tree, squinting and smiling at me. That moment was the proof of my 18-year love for Victoria, and the 6 years of painful memories I could hardly bear to recall. Sin, the streetlight's glow flowed through the car window. I couldn't see Victoria's profile clearly, but I knew she was still crying. I said, "Don't cry, Victoria." I paused for a moment, then continued, "Let's not torture each other this time." The car had already arrived. Charles cleared his throat and said, "I'll go first." I replied, "Find her a place to stay and have someone take her back in the morning." I interrupted Charles, opened the door, and got out. I still had some work to finish today. I had a meeting to attend tomorrow and needed to find suppliers. As for Victoria, if she wanted, she could still secretly meet her lover like in the past life. But this time, it had nothing to do with me. Chapter 8. Victoria never came to see me again. Occasionally, Charles mentioned that Victoria got engaged to her lover. It seemed like there was some drama in between, but I no longer cared. The company was thriving lately. Although busy, it was fulfilling. Charles and Sophie often bickered, but they worked well together. Watching the occasional sparks fly between them made me realize something. During lunch, while Sophie went to get food, I secretly asked Charles, "Do you like Sophie?" The guy looked like he was choked by my question and couldn't say a word. I said, "All right, I get it. I'll ask her for you if there's a chance." Hearing this, Charles' ears turned red, just as Sophie returned with the food. She asked, "Charles, what did you do to feel so guilty? Your ears are all red." Usually Charles would never back down from a teasing, but now he just kept his head down and ate silently. Seeing he didn't answer, Sophie got interested and asked, "Sin, what's up with him?" I replied, "He's lovesick." Charles choked on his food. Sophie was startled and quickly handed him water and patted his back. Watching their interaction, I understood. They were a perfect match and didn't need my help. 6 months passed in a blink. The company gradually got on track. We faced a few challenges but overcame them. At the celebration party, Charles confessed to Sophie. Usually carefree, Charles held a big bouquet, his voice trembling. Sophie smiled and took the flowers, gave him a friendly shove, and then they hugged. This is what love should be, I thought. Love should be like this, not like my one-sided, torturous past where we couldn't stand each other. With those two pairing up, they turned their attention to me. Charles said, "Sin, how about Sophie introduces you to a girlfriend?" Sophie added, "Yes, Sin, I have a friend who's smart and beautiful." Seeing I didn't respond, Charles dragged a chair and sat beside me. Charles said, "Sin, I don't know much about you and Victoria, but people have to move forward." Sophie agreed, "Yes, Sin, you can't seriously want to be alone forever." Watching them team up, I felt a sudden warmth in my heart. Although I hadn't thought about love recently, seeing them like this, having a partner didn't seem so bad. So I said, "All right, I'll leave it to you two." I patted their shoulders. Everything was different from the past, but I was happy every day until Victoria appeared in front of me again. Chapter 9. Charles said, "Sin, I met her at the office entrance." He looked embarrassed. He had gone downstairs to buy Sophie's favorite cake and saw Victoria being stopped by the receptionist. He couldn't pretend not to know her. I understood, signaling it was okay. Charles sighed in relief, closed the office door, and left. I then turned my gaze to Victoria. She wore a white dress with some dirt on her shoes. She seemed thinner after all this time. When she saw me, she straightened her back slightly. She said, "Sin, I'm sorry." After a long time, I had some guesses about her sudden apology. Maybe she found out that the misunderstandings between us in the past were orchestrated by her lover. Perhaps in my past life, I secretly hoped she would realize her mistake before I died and feel regret or guilt. But in this life, I truly didn't care anymore. I rubbed my temples and said, "Everything I did for you before was willing. It's all in the past. You don't need to apologize. If anyone deserves an apology, it's the past me who's already dead." Hearing this, Victoria's hands trembled as she covered her face. She said in a shaky voice, "It's all my fault. I realize now that I love." The office door opened at that moment, and a female voice said, "I want barbecue this afternoon." Before seeing her, I heard her. She was my girlfriend, Emmy, also Sophie's friend. She's kind, cute, smart, and most importantly, she likes me and I like her. We met half a year ago. Together, like an ordinary couple, we would eat and chat. She made me realize that a good relationship can truly empower a person. "Sure," I replied. "I know a great place to eat." I looked at her and couldn't help but smile. Noticing Emma's gaze shift to Victoria, I stood up and walked over to her. "This is Victoria, the daughter of my mom's good friend," I introduced. Turning to Victoria, I said, "This is my girlfriend, Emma." "Hello," Emma greeted. "Are you joining us for dinner? You must be tired from such a long trip." Victoria paused, seemingly puzzled as to how Emma knew where she had come from. I smiled knowingly and looked at the girl next to me, whose eyes reflected the same happiness as mine. Victoria then asked, "Can I speak to Sin alone for a moment?" I was surprised by her request. I didn't think there was anything that needed to be said without Emma hearing. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it in front of." Emma interrupted me with a smile. "It's okay. I'll wait outside." With that, she walked out and closed the door behind her. Victoria looked up at me, her voice choked with emotion. "I love you, Sin. It was only after you died in the last life that I realized I loved you. In this life, I thought that since you didn't like me anymore, I would be with him." But she couldn't stop crying. In the last life, she always had a stern face when she was with me. This time, it seemed like she had endless tears. I sighed and said, "You still don't get it. You don't love me, you're just used to having me around, loving you. You're used to my presence." "No, it's not that. I misunderstood you. Now Victoria, I already have someone I love. I've experienced how happy a good relationship can make a person. You should find your own happiness, just like I have." Victoria fell silent, her sobs the only sound. I handed her some tissues. "Do you need me to find someone to take you home?" She didn't respond. "Rest here for a while. Someone will come to take you home later. Goodbye, Victoria." I opened the office door, and Emma was sitting in Sophie's office across the hall. Charles was sharing a piece of cake with Sophie. Emma turned her chair to face me, smiling as she heard the door open. The evening sun cast a line on the floor, leading me to her. I walked along the line to hold her hand. Emma was delicate and wonderful, a smart girl. With the sunset on her face, I reached out and held her hand. She looked at me and asked, "How did your talk with her go?" "Not much to talk about. Those days are behind me." Unintentionally, many memories flashed through my mind. Those days were vivid yet fleeting like clouds. The sun set and a breeze blew in. Back at the office, the night guard informed me that a handsome man had come to pick up Victoria. I nodded in understanding. The handsome man was undoubtedly Ethan. He was the wedge between Victoria and me, breaking apart our childhood friendship. The girl who used to run after me, calling me Sin, ended up hating me for 6 years. I don't know if Victoria shed a tear for me on the day I died in the hospital bed. I was lost in thought as I sat down at the computer, an urgent task at hand. The company was growing rapidly, and we needed to prepare a proposal for a new project. The client was almost satisfied with the first draft, and if we could secure this deal, it would be a big step forward for the company. My phone suddenly rang. It was Victoria. By this time, she should have reached her destination. I answered the call, hearing her choked voice on the other end. Sin we. I could sense her distress but couldn't comfort her. You've arrived? I interrupted. Yes, Sin. Ethan and I are engaged. He came to pick me up to go to his place, she said slowly. Okay, I wish you happiness, I replied. She fell silent. After about a minute, I heard her sobbing. She was heartbroken, but we were already like parallel lines, never to intersect again. I ended the call and blocked her contact to avoid unnecessary interactions out of respect for Emma. Having experienced an unhealthy relationship and marriage in my past life, I understood the pain it caused. I didn't want Emma to suffer any unfair treatment. I worked until around 3 a.m., finally completing the proposal. Stretching, I headed home. Now working hard in a new city, I had started to build a life here. My heart has finally settled down with my career. I bought myself a big house and raised 2 cats inside. One is named Tiger and the other is Flower. They grew up together in my house, with Tiger as the older brother and Flower as the younger sister. They occasionally bicker, but they are mostly happy. Victoria and I had a joyful childhood together, but after we got together, she ended up hating me for 6 whole years. Now my relationship with Emmy is much more harmonious. After warming up a cup of milk for myself and drinking it, I planned to go to sleep. The 2 cats ran towards me, rubbing against my arms. After drinking the milk and doing a simple wash, I fell into a deep sleep. Who knew that I would be awakened the next day by the sound of a phone ringing? I looked at the caller ID and saw it was Charles. His voice on the phone sounded a bit anxious. Sin, something's wrong. There's been an accident. Charles's voice immediately woke me up. What accident? He said, our company's order was snatched by someone else. His voice was a bit more urgent. Hearing this, I furrowed my brow slightly and said, snatched? I didn't expect that. We've been working hard on this order for a long time. Just the proposal alone was revised numerous times. Last night, I even received a call from the client's representative saying that some things still needed to be modified. I responded immediately, sent Emmy back, and plunged into work to revise the proposal. I originally thought that after a good night's sleep, we would successfully sign the order. This deal is significant, divided into 3 phases, worth $50 million. If we can close it, we would achieve 1/3 of our company's annual performance target. But who knew it would be snatched? I reminded Charles, take it easy, don't rush. After all, rushing won't help. With my reassurance, Charles's emotions finally calmed down. Sin, I don't know the exact details yet. I only know that a company called Cloud Smoke took our order. Okay, I understand. Check the background of this company. I'll head to the office right away. We'll discuss everything in person. I felt a wave of unease. We had worked tirelessly for 1 or 2 months on this order, putting in a lot of effort. It would be upsetting for anyone to have it snatched away. Okay, Charles agreed and hung up the phone. I quickly got up, did a simple wash, and rushed to the office. On the way, I muttered, Cloud Smoke? Could this company be related to Victoria? When I arrived at the office, I went in quickly. Charles and Sophie were there, along with several core management members of the company. Sin, you're here, Charles greeted me. Mr. G, the others called out to me. Sophie nodded at me, her brows slightly furrowed, indicating that the situation was serious. The rest of the employees in the office also looked over. Not wanting this issue to affect everyone's work, I said, let's go to the conference room. We headed to the conference room. Facing the crowd, all eyes were on me, but everyone seemed a bit heavy-hearted. Charles, who has a straightforward personality, stood up immediately and said, Sin, the company behind Cloud Smoke is run by Ethan. Ethan is the one engaged to Victoria. Charles seemed to have more to say but hesitated. I understood what he wanted to say, that the fact this company is named Cloud Smoke likely has something to do with Victoria. Yet, out of respect for me, he didn't continue. Seeing Charles struggling to hold back, I said, "Go on." Charles hesitated for a moment and then said, "Sin, do you think this has anything to do with Victoria? Recently she's been coming to our company frequently." I replied, "It shouldn't. We haven't had much interaction with her. This order was known only to our internal team. I haven't mentioned it to anyone outside, including Victoria." I explained the basic situation, and as they listened, their expressions changed slightly. "Sin, but Ethan is really disgusting. First Charles paused, glanced at me, and held back the rest of his words. "Sin, I'm sorry, I just feel disgusted by this guy's despicable actions." I acknowledged with a nod. I understood Charles's words. I didn't have a good impression of Ethan either. Charles's words, though harsh, were essentially true. In our past lives, he used underhanded methods to steal Victoria's heart from me. Now, in this life, he's here to steal my business. I even suspect that the car accident I had in my previous life was orchestrated by him. Sophie suddenly glared at Charles and said, "If you can't speak properly, then say less. Let's focus on how to respond." Over the past year, Sophie had become a capable professional through her experiences in the workplace. Charles, facing Sophie's reprimand, didn't dare to say much more. The other core management members of the company bowed their heads and said nothing. The problem was not with me anymore. We had been negotiating well with the other company. After a while, seeing that no one was speaking, I said, "Charles, Sophie, please stay. The rest of you can go back to your work." The others responded affirmatively and started to leave. My gaze fell upon Sophie and Charles. The three of us had put in a lot of effort for this company. Its current success was inseparable from our hard work. Now that the two of them had become a couple, everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction. Yet, unexpectedly, such an issue had arisen midway. Looking at Sophie, I said, "Sophie, you and Charles should investigate the situation with this order thoroughly. Check if there's any insider in our company. Also, look into the matters concerning Cloud Smoke Inc. I'll go and meet with Mr. Johnson from the other company." "Sure, Sin," Sophie replied. "Don't worry, Sin. We've got this," Charles assured me. Seeing that both of them were confident, I didn't waste any more time and headed out. I took out my phone and dialed Mr. Johnson's number, but no one answered. The phone rang, but it was never picked up. This could mean that he was either deliberately ignoring my call or he was in a meeting and had left his phone behind. Given the current situation, I felt the former was more likely. It seemed there was little chance of salvaging this deal. However, I still thought it was worth trying. After contemplating for a moment, I headed to Mr. Johnson's company. Upon entering, the receptionist stopped me and asked whom I was there to see. I honestly stated my purpose. The receptionist then asked if I had made an appointment. I replied that I hadn't, but emphasized the importance of my business with Mr. Johnson. The receptionist maintained a professional smile and said, "I'm sorry, sir. Without an appointment, you cannot meet Mr. Johnson. Please schedule an appointment and come back." Hearing this, I felt a chill in my heart. It seemed that the 2 months of hard work we had invested were about to go down the drain. This was the collective effort of our entire company, and I couldn't give up unless there was absolutely no hope. I didn't enter the company but waited outside instead. From morning until finally I saw Mr. Johnson, impeccably dressed, coming down. He looked to be around 40 but had kept himself in good shape without a significant beer belly. Seeing him, I wasted no time and quickly approached. "Mr. Johnson, can we talk?" His gaze fell on me, and the two people with him quickly blocked my path. I tried to push forward but was stopped by them. Mr. Johnson said, "Let him come over." With that, the two men stepped aside. I approached Mr. Johnson and asked, "Mr. Johnson, did you review the proposal I sent you last night? Is there something you are dissatisfied with?" He responded, "Your proposal isn't the issue. It's just that we can't give you this order." "I'm sorry, Sin. His tone carried a hint of apology. "What's the reason for your refusal?" I asked. "The reason is not something I wish to discuss. It's not that your proposal is bad," Mr. Johnson said, looking at me. "I'm sorry, Sin. I have a lunch meeting to attend. I'll take my leave." With that, he walked away briskly. Watching his back, I felt lost for a few seconds. Realizing there was nothing more I could do here, I left his company and headed back to ours. Once there, I called for a meeting with Sophie and Charles. The agenda was simple. I briefly explained the situation, first informing them that we were unlikely to get the order, and second, suggesting that we seek similar companies to collaborate with to ensure our efforts weren't wasted. Charles responded, "All right, Sin." Sophie had no objections and said, "I'll make the arrangements." After Sophie left, Charles turned to me and said, "Sin, I know why we lost this order." Seeing his serious expression, I looked at him, puzzled. "Why?" He explained, "I just did some digging on Ethan. His family isn't wealthy. The only reason he could start his company was with the support of the Liu family. I suspect he got this order through their connections." Charles paused for a few seconds, looking hesitant. I couldn't help but say, "Charles, when did you become so hesitant? Just say it." Charles continued, "This matter relates to Victoria. Do you think she might be acting out of spite and deliberately sabotaging you?" I glanced at Charles. The relationship between Victoria and me wasn't simple. We had both been reincarnated. I knew about her past and she knew about mine. In our previous lives, we had been married. In this life, we were neither lovers nor spouses. We had reverted to our initial acquaintance. However, I no longer wished to pursue a relationship with Victoria, not wanting to repeat past mistakes. And so Victoria seemed to want to get closer to me in this life, which confused me. Shouldn't she hate me? She should have hated me in the previous life. Why would she want to be near me in this life? I was puzzled and unsure of her intentions. I said, "It probably isn't true. This might be Ethan's doing." I remember Victoria was never interested in business matters. She liked doing what she enjoyed. Charles, hearing me mention Ethan, immediately became more furious. He gritted his teeth and said, "It really was that bastard Ethan. I'm going to deal with him right now." As he spoke, he started to walk out. I stopped him and said, "It's useless to find him now. The most urgent thing is to continue looking for new partners." Charles nodded, acknowledging that I was right, but he still left a harsh remark. "Our company and Ethan are going to be enemies." I agreed, "Indeed we are. Actually, we were enemies in the previous life too. Ethan is a disgusting, despicable person." I sat in my office looking for some information and checking potential business partners to see if there was an opportunity to find new collaborators. I don't know when it happened, but my office phone started ringing. I glanced at the caller ID and saw it was an unknown number. I usually don't answer such spam calls, but the caller was persistent, dialing 3 or 4 times continuously. Seeing this, I finally answered the call, but I didn't speak first. After about 3 to 5 seconds, a low voice on the other end said, "Is this sincere?" "Yes, it is," I replied solemnly. "This is Ethan. It's nice to speak with you for the first time," he said, his tone clearly provocative. I was slightly taken aback, but quickly recovered. I asked, "What do you want?" "Nothing special. I just wanted to tell you that I'm engaged to Vicky now. She is my fiancée, and I hope you can keep your distance from her." I frowned slightly, feeling a bit displeased. The displeasure wasn't from him asking me to keep my distance from Victoria, but from his threatening, commanding tone. I responded coldly, "Your matters are none of my business. I'm not interested in her affairs and I don't need your reminder. That's the best. If you don't heed my words, I'll make you understand the consequences. Consider this incident a warning. If it happens again, it won't be this simple," he said, his voice turning sinister. I asked, "Do you think it's honorable to use despicable means to steal this deal?" He replied, "It doesn't matter how it's done as long as I win. I've said what I needed to say. Take care." With that, he hung up. I stood there in a daze for a few seconds, increasingly suspecting that he was behind the car accident in my previous life. Of course, I had no evidence for this now. It was all speculation. After some thought, I decided to have someone investigate Ethan. Although I had asked Charles to check on him before, his investigation was somewhat superficial. I decided to have a deeper investigation done to see if there was any dirt on him. I assigned the task to someone who assured me there would be no problem as long as the payment was sufficient. I agreed and asked for quick results. He promised to get back to me within a week. After hanging up, I felt a bit heavy-hearted. If Ethan was indeed unscrupulous, then Victoria would be in danger by his side. Perhaps I should warn her, but I didn't think it was necessary. In the afternoon, Emmy called and invited me to dinner, saying she was already waiting downstairs at my office. I agreed and said I would be right down. When I saw Emmy, her long hair was flowing, and she wore a floral dress with a smile on her face. Her skin was very fair and delicate, resembling the gentle and charming girls described in novels. "I'm here, Sin," she waved at me. I ran over to her and she smiled, asking, "What would you like to eat today? My treat." "If you're treating, I'll eat anything," I replied. At the restaurant, Emmy kept smiling. Seeing her so happy, I couldn't help but ask, "Emmy, did something good happen today?" "Seeing you makes me happy," she replied, surprising me and warming my heart. After she ordered, she handed the menu to me, asking what I'd like to eat. I noticed that she had ordered all my favorite dishes. I took the menu and ordered a few of her favorite dishes too, saying, "Seeing you makes me happy too." "That's good," she laughed. "I heard from Sophie that you're having some trouble. Do you need my help?" "I'm ready to step in any time," she said, waving her small fists. I waved my hand, saying, "It's not time for you to step in yet." Suddenly, my phone on the table rang again. I glanced at the caller ID and saw another unknown number. I initially thought it was Ethan again and wanted to hang up, but Emmy suddenly said, "Answer it." I looked at her and saw that she, propping her chin up with a curious gaze fixed on me, I hesitated for a moment before finally pressing the answer button and putting the call on speaker. To my surprise, it was Victoria's voice that came through. "Sin, it's me. You blocked my contacts, so I had to use a different number." Frowning slightly, I asked, "What do you want?" At that moment, Emmy gestured at me, moving her two fingers as if they were walking legs. I knew what she meant. She wanted to excuse herself to give us privacy. But I quickly shook my head and said, "You don't need to leave, Emmy." As soon as I spoke, Victoria's voice came through the phone again. "Is she with you?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "I'm having dinner with Emmy." I had no intention of hiding my relationship with Emmy. I didn't want to be part of an unhealthy relationship. Emmy, hearing this, graciously greeted Victoria. "Hello, Victoria." There was a minute or two of silence on the other end before Victoria spoke again. "Sin, I called just to tell you that the issues at your company have nothing to do with me. It was all Ethan's doing." "Got it," I said expressionlessly. "If there's nothing else, I'll get back to dinner with Emmy." "Sin," she started. I took a deep breath and said, "Just call me by my name." Another silence ensued before she finally said, "There's nothing else, goodbye." After the call ended, Emmy looked at me and said, "Sincere, you were really cold just now." I stared at her and replied, "I'm cold to other women, but I'm very passionate with you." Emmy suddenly exclaimed that I was being cheesy, her face flushing red. After we finished dinner, Emmy offered, "If you need money, just let me know. I have $10 million in my account. If that's not enough, I'll ask my dad for more." I knew her family was well off, given that Sophie's family wasn't lacking either, and they were best friends. Although I didn't need her money at the moment, hearing her say such things filled my heart with immense satisfaction. "I don't need the money right now, but could I visit your parents in a few days?" I asked. "You want to meet my parents?" Emmy's face turned a deeper shade of red. "It's so sudden. I'm not prepared." "Don't you want me to meet them?" I questioned. "No, it's not that. I'll call them right now," she said, her blush deepening. Before I could tell her not to rush, she had already dialed her mom's number. "Mom, I have something very important to tell you. Emmy started as soon as the call connected. "What is it, Emmy?" Her mom's voice came through. "Your future son-in-law wants to come over and meet you and Dad," Emmy said playfully, giving me a mischievous look. Her words made me nervous. "Really? When?" Emmy's mom sounded pleased. Seizing the opportunity, I greeted, "Hello, Auntie. This is Sincere." "Sincere, you're there too?" Emmy's mom seemed surprised. "Yes, Auntie. Emmy and I are having dinner. We were talking about visiting you and Uncle. When would be a good time for you?" "Any time is fine, even tomorrow," Emmy's mom replied. "Sincere, I've heard a lot about you from Sophie and Emmy. I'm curious to meet my future son-in-law." Seeing how friendly her mom was eased my initial tension. "All right, I'll visit in the next couple of days." "Great. I'll let Emmy's dad know. Just inform us beforehand," her mom said. "Will do," I assured her. Her mom then turned to Emmy. "Emmy, don't be too hard on Sincere, okay?" "I know, Mom. How could I bully my future husband?" Emmy stuck out her tongue playfully, looking adorable. After a few more words, they ended the call. Emmy looked at me. "See, my mom is already so warm and welcoming to you." I smiled. "Isn't that just perfect?" After dinner, Emmy and I took a stroll nearby. Sensing that I was in a low mood, she quickly suggested we visit an arcade. We played some childhood games, which helped lift my spirits. Around 9:30 p.m., I took her home. 3 days later, I found a new business partner. They expressed interest in working with us, and their company's strength far surpassed that of Mr. Wang's company. They even mentioned that if our proposal met their expectations, they would offer us a 30% premium. This meant that a $50 million deal could potentially increase to over $60 million. I shared this news with the company, and everyone was thrilled. I personally revised the proposal several times over the next week, and we finally secured the deal. The entire team was overjoyed, and I gave everyone a 2-day break along with a bonus. Charles came up to me and said, "Sin, this is what we call a blessing in disguise." I responded, and after taking a couple of days off, I was ready to get back to the grind. The next day, I received a call from the investigator I had hired. He told me the report was ready and sent it to me. I said great and paid the remaining balance. When I opened the file, it was all about Ethan. I read through it carefully and discovered that Ethan was a man who climbed the social ladder by using women. He had previously squandered other women's money, and one had even committed suicide by jumping into a river because of him. His real name wasn't Ethan, but Nathan. My expression changed slightly upon reading this. It was quite unexpected. This guy had deceived at least 10 women. Now his interest in Victoria must be part of a similar plan. I initially wanted to warn Victoria immediately, but then I remembered that she, like me, had been reborn. She should be on guard. After all, she had been reborn and must have encountered something related to Ethan. About a month later, we completed the first phase of the project for our client. They were very satisfied with our efficiency and quality, and they promised to give us all their future projects. We were thrilled. About a week later, I received a call from Mr. Wang, who had previously rejected us. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. "Mr. Wang, what brings you to call me today?" "Mr. Sin, I have to admit I'm in a tough spot. The company I gave the project to can't handle it, and now I'm in a bind." Mr. Wang sounded embarrassed. I replied, "Mr. Wang, you're so capable. How come you can't handle this?" "Mr. Sin, I'll give you the project. You come up with a plan, and I won't interfere. I'll even give you a 10% premium." After thinking it over, I agreed. After all, it would be foolish not to take the money handed to us. I called for a meeting with Sophie and Charles. Charles was furious after hearing the situation. "Now he wants to come back? We shouldn't work with him." Sophie rolled her eyes at him. "There's money to be made. Why not cooperate?" I agreed with Sophie. "That's right. Everyone, let's work hard and finish Mr. Wang's project." Everyone agreed and left the meeting room. On the same day, Ethan called me yelling, "Sin, what do you mean by stealing my project?" I replied, "Nothing, just doing my job." "Fine, you'll pay for this." Ethan threatened me. I was displeased. "Nathan, I called out his real name. He was stunned for a few seconds. Who's Nathan? I'm Ethan. All right, Mr. Ethan, take care. I hung up the phone. I didn't expect that this call would almost lead to an accident. One day, while driving home from work, a car suddenly rushed towards me. Fortunately, I managed to avoid it. This near accident made me realize that Ethan was a very dangerous person. After some thought, I sent Victoria the information about Ethan. What she chose to do with it was her business. I believe she also had a strong dislike for Ethan. After handling these matters, I couldn't help but feel relieved. The company was growing rapidly, and everything was going smoothly. I also met Emmy's parents, who were very pleased with me. Emmy's mother, in particular, was quite enthusiastic and often invited me over. After visiting a few times, she asked when Emmy and I would get engaged. I said, any time. I quickly discussed it with my parents, who were also very happy. Although my mom was a bit disappointed that I didn't end up with Victoria, whom she had always liked. She quickly took a liking to Emmy once she met her and urged us to get engaged soon. Both families agreed, and we were very much in love. It was the perfect situation. We chose an auspicious date, and about a week later, Emmy and I got engaged. The day was lively and filled with joy. Sophie and Charles, the matchmakers, were definitely present. After the engagement ceremony, I was exhausted and went home to rest. The next morning, I saw news about Ethan. He was arrested for fraud and intentional harm, having deceived more than 10 girls. It became a hot topic, and everyone despised him. Around the same time, I received a call from Victoria. Sin, thank you for helping me. I replied, I wasn't helping you, more like helping myself. I find Ethan disgusting. Although I can't prove he was involved in my accident in my past life, the clues suggest he is ruthless. After all, I almost had another car accident earlier. Victoria was silent for a moment. She said, no matter what, I have to thank you. Ethan is not a good person. I know that too. I mumbled an acknowledgement and suddenly didn't know what to say. Both of us fell silent for a while. She said to me, Sin, congratulations on your engagement. Thank you for your blessings, I replied. She said, I'm about to go abroad to study, planning to learn something. If things go well over there, I might not come back. Her voice seemed to carry a slight tremor, but no matter what happened between us had become a thing of the past. We had become complete strangers. I said, I wish you all the best and hope you find happiness. After that, I hung up the phone. About a month later, Sophie and Charles had their wedding. Emma and I attended as the maid of honor and best man. In this love story, the two truly managed to consider each other and love each other deeply. I envied them, and of course, I was also grateful to have Emma by my side at that moment. Holding her hand and looking into her eyes, I thought to myself that I would be happy with her forever. Victoria's side story. After Sincere called, I started packing up my office in the adjacent lounge. When I wasn't at home, I mostly stayed at the company, but I didn't want him to know that. After all, he had always been so excellent since we were kids. So much had happened between us, and my pride constantly reminded me never to bow down or admit defeat. Although I was a bit puzzled about why he suddenly proposed a divorce, I still felt a slight sense of relief. Perhaps we really were a pair of ill-fated lovers who never had the chance to live a peaceful life together. Now that we were separating, it might be a good thing. But when the moment of separation finally came, the anger and resentment in my heart disappeared, leaving only an indescribable melancholy. I picked up our photo from the desk, just about to stuff it into a drawer when the police called. Hello, are you a family member of Sincere? Please come to the Central Hospital. Time seemed to stop at that moment. When I regained consciousness, I was already on my way to the hospital. Later, I couldn't really remember how I felt at that moment. I only remembered that I didn't shed a single tear until I returned from the hospital to our home. As if possessed, I walked into his study. The photo album on the bookshelf was placed at the bottom, but I still spotted it right away. I remembered the last time I saw this album, we had a huge fight. And now, seeing the album again, He was no longer in this world. I took a deep breath and opened the album. The first page was a photo of us from our first meeting. The picture showed us as children, with a nice sunny day in the background. Sincere had his eyes slightly downcast, his eyelashes casting a shadow on his face. Those were good times. Yes, Sincere and I weren't always like this. We grew up together. He was my best friend, my brother. He was very handy, making beautiful flower crowns for me during picnics and calling me a little princess. He excelled academically, especially in math, spending countless afternoons patiently tutoring me in the yard without ever showing annoyance. He was a great cook, making delicious dishes like braised pork and stir-fried greens that I loved. He would flick my forehead with his finger, but it never hurt. He would take me to amusement parks and cover my eyes in haunted houses. When I fought with my parents, he would take me away. I knew his pressures and responsibilities, and he understood my pride and sensitivity. We were the ones who understood each other best. Later, I got into the same university as him. On the day he helped me choose my dorm room, I was still looking forward to our next 4 years together. But then, I met another guy named Ethan. He said he liked me, taking me to the beach on his motorcycle at high speeds, making my heart race. He asked if I liked him too. Feeling my heart pounding, I was confused. Until then, I always thought I liked Sincere, so I told Ethan that. Ethan said, "What you feel for him is dependence. You even call him brother. Affection is not love." Maybe Ethan was right. I had mistaken dependence for love. That evening, Ethan and I sat by the sea, the waves hitting the rocks beneath our feet. He kissed the back of my hand, and I didn't refuse. Later, I introduced Ethan to my parents. Then, Sincere and I got drunk, and he stayed at my place. After that, the footage of us in my apartment elevator spread throughout the school. I didn't understand why he did that. Ethan suggested, "Maybe he wants to be with you." I was incredulous. We had known each other for so long, and I knew Sincere wasn't like that. But that day, it was indeed Sincere who went home with me, and only I, Ethan, and Sincere knew the location of my apartment. My father said, "If you marry Sincere, we can get through this crisis." He paused. "I can't force you, but think about it." Hearing those words, I felt I vaguely understood the truth of the matter. First using online rumors and those around me to strike at me, then using the company's survival to pressure me. Overnight, Sincere seemed to change completely. I didn't understand why, but as a member of the family, even if it was a marriage of convenience, it was something I should do, so I went to find Sincere. After all, we grew up together. He would never treat me badly. He never had. "Marry me. Let's get engaged," I said to Sincere. He seemed very happy. For some reason, I felt quite good too. Maybe it was because finally no one was gossiping about me anymore. The next time I saw Ethan was at my engagement party. The day I decided to find Sincere, I broke up with Ethan. He was very upset, but he said he understood my predicament and agreed. Seeing his unshaven face, I knew he was probably more hurt than he showed. And how could I, under such circumstances, be at peace marrying someone else? Yet Sincere chose that moment to tell me he wanted to cancel the engagement. I was furious, or rather humiliated. It was clearly him who had schemed to push me to this point. And now he was pretending to be the good guy? Thinking of him, and then thinking of Ethan sulking in the corner with a drink, I slammed the door and left. After marrying Sincere, things were actually not bad. He was still the same as before, no sweet words, but he did everything a husband should do. It was as if the person who had done all those hurtful things to me wasn't him. Sometimes, even I seemed to subconsciously forget about it, and our relationship improved. Until one day, during a business event, I ran into Ethan again. He hurriedly pulled me aside, and I saw that video once more. Everything reverted to square one. I remembered thinking at the time that since we were already married, Sincere had no reason to release the video. But looking at Ethan's bleeding lips, I couldn't say anything. I had always felt guilty towards Ethan. In my memory, Sincere wouldn't do such despicable things, but he did. Sincere wouldn't hit someone, but he did. I stopped believing anything he said and stopped going home, like a snail retreating into its shell, until Sincere died in a car accident. The police said he swerved to avoid a group of children. He was a very kind person, I knew that, but he also deeply hurt me and another person who loved me. Coming back to reality, the photo albums still lay open on the table. The young us in the photos were still smiling happily. A drop of water fell, smudging the childish handwriting, "I like you." I hurriedly tried to wipe the water stain before realizing that it was my own tears. But then I had an accident and was reborn. What I thought was an accident turned out to be Ethan's premeditated plan. He never really liked me, only my family's background. I regretted it deeply. Why had I hurt the one who loved me most? Sincere. Because of Ethan, I hated Sincere for 6 whole years. So, after my rebirth, the first thing I wanted to do was find Sincere, find my sin, and start over with him. But it was too late. He already had a girl he liked, and she was great, beautiful, and gentle. He began to distance himself from me, and I knew I had hurt him too deeply. So I didn't blame him. But then Ethan approached me again. I hated him. I wanted to take revenge. I prepared a series of plans to drag him into the abyss. Several times, my plans were nearly discovered, and I thought I wouldn't succeed, couldn't take revenge. But in the end, Sincere stepped up and gave me some crucial information. I finally succeeded in my revenge. With my revenge complete, I planned to live abroad. There was nothing worth staying for here, and conveniently, I got an opportunity for further education overseas. Leaving, I knew I would never cross paths with Sincere again, but I will always wish him a lifetime of happiness from the bottom of my heart.